This video is sponsored by Path of Exile 2. Thank you so much to the team at Grinding Gear Games for giving me the opportunity to play early. Early access is live now for $30, which includes 300 points for you to use towards cosmetics and much more. There are also other high-end supporter packs you can choose from, which include special character customization such as pets, back attachments, hideout decorations, titles, and other special effects. Early access features 3 acts of story content, 6 character classes, 120 skill gems, hundreds of equipment base types, more than 100 unique boss fights, and so much more. You can play with your friends with couch co-op, cross-play, and even cross-progression. If you want to stay up to date with any future content updates throughout the early access period, follow the official Path of Exile social media channel and learn more at www.pathofexile2.com. For those of you who decide to jump in now, here's a list of the top 10 best beginner tips for new players to ensure you have the smoothest and most enjoyable experience right from the start. Let's get started. Tip number 1 is to choose the right class for you. Early access features 6 playable character classes, each with 2 ascendancies. On full release, there will be 12 playable character classes, each with 3 ascendancies for a total of 36 ascendancies, which can be quite overwhelming for someone who is new to Path of Exile and action RPG games. So, let's quickly break down each class available in early access so you can figure out which class is the best for you and your preferred playstyle. The Monk is all about quick and aggressive melee-focused gameplay. Many of the Monk's skills focus on movement, which makes it one of the most agile classes in Path of Exile 2. This includes quick killing blow dashes, the ability to leap into the air and strike your foes, and even spinning your quarterstaff to attack multiple enemies at once in quick succession. The Monk can also imbue his attacks with different elements that include ice, lightning, and wind, giving you many opportunities for builds. This is actually the first class I chose, so if you're looking for some really powerful monk builds to use from Act 1 to Act 3, check out the links in the pinned comment below. The Warrior is your classic melee-focused tank class. This class deals massive amounts of damage and has incredible survivability. It also gives you access to some Warcry buffs to make your character even stronger, like setting enemies on fire and then unleashing a powerful ground slam once they're crowded up, allowing you to destroy mobs easily. If you're a fan of tankier classes, watching enemies explode on impact, and using big two-handed weapons, the Warrior is the class for you. The Witch is best described as the Necromancer class of Path of Exile 2. This class has access to some powerful spells, but its main source of power is the ability to control hordes of undead minions, which are used to pull aggro away from you, and even overwhelm enemies to give you more opportunities to attack. In addition to this, the Witch can also control minions by ordering them to perform specific actions instead of just having them mindlessly walk around. This class is very powerful and is great for new players. The Archer specializes in powerful single target damage with the longbow and has access to some powerful AoE skills which can be used to freeze enemies instantly by firing a rain of arrows in the sky or even spreading poison within mobs to cause damage over time. Similar to the Monk, the Archer also has access to elemental attacks which include fire, ice, and lightning arrows. It's also a very agile class which allows her to move in and out of combat and leap backwards high into the air to avoid damage and attack simultaneously. This is the ultimate Legolas-inspired Archer class. The Sorceress is the main mage class in Path of Exile 2, which is capable of using elemental magic to destroy mobs of enemies. This includes burning packs of enemies with fireballs, freezing them with a massive ice orb, causing them to shatter right before your eyes, and powerful lightning currents which can transfer through enemies, causing massive AoE destruction. This is easily one of the best range classes in Path of Exile 2 and will give you access to some very high damage potential. And lastly, the Mercenary. Unlike the Archer who wields a longbow, the Mercenary's primary weapon is a crossbow which is capable of firing multiple different ways, including close-range AoE shots that can stun enemies, long-range shots that attack slower but deal more damage, and machine gun-style shots which are incredibly useful for breaking enemy armor, making them more vulnerable to damage. This class can also use elemental abilities to freeze or even set mobs of enemies on fire with elemental-infused bolts or even grenades. This class is very versatile and is perfect for players who enjoy third-person shooting games. Hopefully, after breaking down each of these 6 classes, you'll now have an idea of which one you want to start playing Path of Exile 2 with, or if you're up to it, just play all 6 classes steadily at your own pace to enjoy every single one of them. Path of Exile 2 provides a handful of user interface options which allow you to customize exactly what you can see on screen. Well, I have some recommendations for you today that might actually make your gameplay experience more enjoyable and more efficient. If you head over to your options and select the interface tab and then scroll down to the section that says gameplay, you'll see an option towards the middle that reads Show Mini Life Bar above NPCs. If you click the drop-down menu and select Enemies Only, you'll be able to see the life bars of every single enemy you attack on screen. I turned this on immediately when I found out about it, and it made me more efficient overall because now I'm able to see which enemies are low, which can be useful for health regenerating purposes or even timing skills that work based off of enemy deaths. It's not necessary by any means, but I'm sure many of you will find it useful when you're playing. I know I did. If you scroll down a bit further until you reach the chat section, there's actually an option here to completely remove the global chat so you aren't distracted by what other players are typing on screen. Another quality of life change you can do for yourself, and this is for controller players specifically by the way, is to change your panel mode. So by default, your panel as a controller player will be full screen. What this will do is open up a full screen version of your character's stats, skills, passives, etc. But if you want an alternative version of this menu that's more compact and provides the same amount of information, you can switch the panel mode to right or left, and it will create a smaller, more condensed version of your menus that you can view on screen. It's up to you to decide which version is best, but even if you decide to go with the right or left panel, you can always switch to full screen mode by holding the touchpad on the PlayStation controller, for example. Within this gamepad section, you can also change the scaling of your HUD to make your map or skills larger on screen, and activate the gold counter to show exactly how much gold you have on your character at all times. Skill gems are socketed into your character, and once inserted will grant access to a specific skill provided you meet the skill's attribute requirements. Path of Exile 2 features a new but familiar skill and support gem system. With over 120 skill gems in early access and a planned 240 plus in full release, you'll be able to customize your build to your heart's content. Support gems are now socketed directly into skill gems, removing many of the frustrations present in the older system while also maintaining all the previous depth. Support gems are very important because they make your skills stronger and sometimes alter the effects of your skills so they fit perfectly for a specific build you are creating. By default, when you start the game, you will be able to socket 2 support gems into each skill you unlock on your build. As you get further into the game, you'll be able to increase your skill potential by unlocking more sockets. When you find a support gem, the game will give you a handful of support gems to choose from that are recommended for that specific skill on your build, giving you a bit of guidance. One thing that can be easily missed though that you might overlook is the fact that many of these support gems can be used for different skills in your build. For example, when I created the Martial Tempo support gem, it was recommended for the Quarterstaff Strike, but I was actually able to move this support gem to any of my skills, which means I can increase the attack speed of Tempest Flurry, Falling Thunder, Storm Wave, or pretty much any skill on my build, giving me way more flexibility. You can create some very effective builds with the recommended support gems, but if you want to experiment more and have more flexibility, you can uncheck the recommended gems option and see a full list of all of the gems that fit into your skills. There are hundreds of support gems to choose from, which means the possibilities are endless. Expect to see a lot of unique builds here on YouTube over the next couple of weeks. You should also know about spirit gems and how spirit works. As you play through the game, you'll stumble across uncut skill gems, uncut support gems, and uncut spirit gems. Spirit gems will let you unlock spirit skills, which unlock permanent effects on your build. For example, minions are considered a spirit skill, and in order to activate a spirit skill, 1, it needs to be socketed into your list, but 2, most importantly, you will need enough spirit to activate the skill. For example, on my monk build, I have a spirit gem called Herald of Thunder. This skill shoots out lightning projectiles that deal AoE damage every time I kill a shocked enemy, but in order for this skill to remain active, I need 30 spirit on my build. Your skill list will tell you exactly how much spirit you have at the top, or you can go to options, go to interface, scroll down to gameplay, and turn on show life/mana levels on. Activating this will show you exactly how much life, mana, and spirit you have right above your mana bar. Each spirit skill on your build requires a specific amount of spirit to activate. For example, if I go to the bind skill screen, you can see my spirit skill, Herald of Thunder, at the top. If I click this skill, it says that it requires 30 spirit to activate. Since I have 60 spirit on my build, I can allocate half of the spirit towards Herald of Thunder, which will activate this skill permanently, leaving me with 30 spirit to use for another spirit skill if I choose to do that. So be careful when you're unlocking spirit skills in your build because you might think they're active, but you might have forgotten to allocate your spirit points. You can increase your spirit through gear items, the passive skill tree, and various other effects like equipping a scepter on your build, for example. If you ever want to know how strong your equipped skills are, you can actually see the DPS of every single skill on your build if you go to your skills menu. This feature is extremely helpful when you're deciding which skills are strongest on your build, and the DPS values are updated in real time, which means every time you swap out a piece of gear, the DPS values will change. This system is very useful during the first act of the game because you'll be picking up a lot of weapons, and you want to make sure you have the most damage possible during boss fights and open world exploration. As you progress through Act 1, you'll eventually unlock the Hooded One NPC. This NPC can be very valuable to you throughout the game because he serves two purposes. The first thing he can do for you is identify items free of cost, which means you don't have to use any scrolls of wisdom to see the modifiers the item dropped with. This NPC will also let you refund your passive skill tree points, which means if you ever need to increase your stats to meet the minimum requirements for a skill, or if you want more defense or more damage on your build, you can go to town, speak to the Hooded One, and refund each passive skill individually, which will cost you some coins in return. Another important thing to note, if you're planning on respeccing your character tree, it's best to do it earlier in the game because the cost of refunding a skill point increases with your character level. This means the higher the level you are, the more coins it will cost you to refund each individual passive skill. Speaking of the passive skill tree, there's a really nice feature that some of you may not know about that can make your build crafting process a whole lot easier. When you open the passive skill tree, you are presented with hundreds of different options and paths for you to take as you progress through the game and unlock passive skill points. If you look at the top right corner here, you'll see a search bar. Now let's say for example you want to make an ice focused build where you want to freeze enemies and you want to make sure you're unlocking the correct skills. Well, you can actually type in the word freeze in this search bar and every single passive skill that contains this word will be highlighted on the skill tree as you can see here. This will give you an idea of which skills you should pursue and which route in the tree you should take so you're not wasting any skill points. Sure, you can refund the skill points, but it becomes very expensive in the endgame. Another example, let's say I want skills that give me more life. If I type in life in the search bar, every single skill that provides life on kill, or maybe even increases my max life, will be highlighted. This is an incredible tool to use and should not be ignored if you're trying to make the best build possible. Vendors are actually really good in Path of Exile 2 and are an easy way to increase your character's power as you progress through the game. There's specific NPCs in town that sell items such as armor, weapons, amulets, rings, etc. And these items are constantly being refreshed and will also change as you level up. The reason you should check these vendors often is because sometimes they sell rare items with really good modifiers. For example, this staff I have here was purchased from one of the vendors, and if you look at the modifiers here, you can immediately see just how good of an item it is. 56% increased physical damage, 47% elemental attack damage, lightning damage, and even crit damage bonus. Don't sleep on these vendors. Sometimes the items they sell are okay, but sometimes you will get lucky and find a really good rare item for sale that could fit perfectly on your build. It's also important to understand each character's stat because it will help you decide which one you need to increase as you're progressing through your passive skill tree and figuring out which gear pieces make the most sense for your build. Life is your character's overall HP. Energy shield takes damage before your life bar, which means the higher your energy shield is, the less likely it is for an enemy to penetrate it and reduce your life bar. Skills use mana, which means the more mana you have, the more times you can activate a skill before your mana bar depletes and you have to wait for it to regenerate. Spirit is a resource you will need to activate minions or skills that provide permanent buffs for your character. The more spirit you have, the more buffs you can activate at once. Armor increases your protection from physical damage only. It does not protect you from damage types such as fire, ice, lightning, or chaos. Evasion increases the chance for you to avoid specific attacks from enemies. This means the higher your evasion is, the more difficult it will be for enemies to land their attacks on you. However, if your opponent has more accuracy, and their accuracy outweighs your evasion, you will not be able to avoid any attacks. You also have your resistances here, which will show you exactly how resistant you are to each type of element in the game based off of your gear items and passives. There are 3 attributes in Path of Exile 2. You have Strength, Dexterity, and Intelligence. For every 1 point of strength you add to the build, you will get +2 to maximum life. For every 1 dexterity you add, you'll get +5 to your accuracy rating. And for every 1 intelligence, you will get +2 to your maximum mana. You should also know that each piece of equipment in the game has a certain level requirement and attribute requirement. Without meeting these requirements, you will not be able to equip the equipment items or even socket gems into skills. There is also an attribute requirement for support gems. For every +5 of an attribute, it can increase the number of support gems for that corresponding attribute. The best way to increase the support gems for your skills is to unlock those highway nodes that lead to specific skills on the passive skill tree. Each highway node will give you a choice of adding either +5 strength, +5 dex, or +5 intelligence. The last tip I want to talk about is the Salvage Bench, how to unlock it, and what it's used for. In Path of Exile 2, you can sell your gear to vendors, you can disenchant your gear to receive crafting resources, and you can salvage your gear as well. You'll unlock the Salvage Bench in Act 1, which means you can start salvaging gear early. At first, you may be a little confused, since it might seem like you can't salvage any of your gear, and it's because you can only salvage gear with rune sockets or gear with quality. Gear with sockets grants Artificer Shards, while gear with quality grants one of the 3 quality currencies, which are Blacksmith's Whetstone, Artificer's Whetstone, and Armorer's Scrap. When you salvage enough gear to get 10 Artificer Shards, you'll receive an Artificer Orb. Artificer Orbs add a rune socket to a piece of gear, which will allow you to place runes and add new damage and defense modifiers to that specific gear piece. Almost all armor and weapons can only have 1 rune socket maximum, except 2-handed weapons and chest armor, which can have up to 2 rune sockets. I hope these tips were helpful, and if you think I missed anything that might be important for a new player to know right away, feel free to let us know in the comments below. If this all sounds interesting to you and you want to try Path of Exile 2 for yourself, you can purchase early access right now for $30 if you use the link below. For those of you who want extras like special character customizations that include pets, back attachments, hideout decorations, titles, and other special effects, there's also higher end support packs to choose from. If you enjoyed this video, a thumbs up would be greatly appreciated, and if you want to see more Path of Exile content coming soon, don't forget to subscribe and turn on those bell notifications. Thanks for watching, everyone.